So my name's Albert. I work for a company called Expion, Chief Innovation Officer, and we work primarily with brands, media companies, CPG, and retailer and hospitality in regards to handling fragmented social. And one of the big things that all these businesses have in common is they want to gather the data. They want to understand what people are saying, and they want to use this information to better the customer experience, to get things to people faster, or make their lives better, whether it's through innovation in product, innovation in service. So I have with me two esteemed panelists. I'll let them introduce themselves. We're going to talk today about data. How is data changing the role of the marketer? And let's get to it. So, Greg, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Thanks, Shelley, for the invitation. And Zeev, great to chat with you last night at dinner. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Greg Bailey. I'm head of marketing at Pacific Life Insurance Company out in Orange County, California. And I have responsibility, amongst other things, for product marketing, market research, brand messaging, overall marketing and communications for the enterprise. And we're really focused on right now the nexus or intersection between mobile and social and data, and using all three of those elements to improve the customer experience. And so I'll make some comments throughout the afternoon here in our session about those elements.
Hi, I'm Maryam Banikarim. I'm local in New York. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for the Gannett company. And in that role, since CMO jobs mean different things in a lot of different places, I oversee corporate communications, research, marketing, and actually national sales.
All right, so let's get right to it. Everyone wants data, but I personally believe that many of the businesses and clients I talk to, they actually don't know what to do with it, right? They have data, but they can't do anything with it, or they're crippled by it. So tell me about, we'll start with Greg. Tell me about data in the role at Pacific Life. Tell me something that you've learned and how you action it to improve the business or improve the experience for the customer.
Yeah, exactly. I just referenced the fact that we're really focused right now on customer experience and removing friction from the entire experience. Our distribution model is one of distributing our product set through independent financial advisors. And so we have two customers. I oftentimes refer to us as a B2B2C brand. And the two customers are one, first, the financial advisor population, of which we work with about 25,000 of those throughout the United States, and then ultimately the consumer population. And that friction that I refer to is the point of sale between the financial advisor and their client. And oftentimes we can just think about that experience the last time that you may have had a conversation about an insurance product or an insurance sale or an annuity or something along those lines. It's a very analog world, and we're moving from an analog paper-based world into a digital mobile type of context. And so one of the things we've recently done is we have just announced on Monday this week, just announced a brand new mobile operating platform from Pacific Life for financial advisors to engage their clients in an entirely new experience to sell and service life insurance. And so as a result of that, that now takes us from the paper-based analog world into this exciting new mobile-enabled world. And the data elements now that we have access to, we've built an interesting and very amazing framework to look at that data, to understand it, to learn from that, to test new ideas, and to continue to improve the customer experience over time. And so that's one element in the marketing arena that we're really interested in gleaning in this new capacity of having rich data, really a deep understanding of how we continue to improve that customer experience.
So I'll probably take a much broader tack on data. Look, I think the name of the game has always been understanding your consumers. I don't think that premise is any different today than any other time. If I had a dime for every time somebody was talking about big data and had no idea what they were talking about, I'd be a very rich person today. It's sort of like the buzzword in the industry. You know, it was ROI a couple of years ago. Now everybody talks about big data. And I was talking with my CEO because we, like every other company, talk about big data. And she was saying how she belongs to a CEO group, and all the CEOs know they have to be figuring out what to do about big data, and if only they knew what the hell it was. So, you know, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, there's more ways for you to know what's going on with your consumers than in the past. You know, I think you still have to know what to do with that data, right? It's not just about analytics. You actually, somebody said to me, this is so random, but I was moderating a panel at Comic-Con, which makes about as much sense as anything else I could be doing. And one of the guys, Chip Kidd, who's a great book designer, said, now in the graphic design business, it's all about computers, right? Everybody does animation using computers. He said, but it doesn't take the place of having ideas. And it's sort of the same thing. So yes, it matters to be able to understand data and parse it and have a good analytics team, but it doesn't take away the idea of knowing what an idea is, what to do with that idea, and then to use that data to actually make informed decisions, right? It's sort of like you're not going to use a focus group to figure out all the products you're going to launch. We're in the media business. I think one of the things about data, and I'll take it to the most basic level, is now journalists can actually see their engagement, right? Before, it's so interesting. I was with a woman who I work with in the very early days of the internet. She's only ever worked in digital media as a journalist. And she said, you know, now a reporter's job is not just to write great content, it's also actually to have audience engagement. Because if you think about it, in the old days, you wrote a great article, and you didn't really have to care about the headline or how people engage with it, because guess what? It arrived at your doorstep, right? So you got the paper, you had to read the story. Now, that story has to work that much harder in terms of the headline it writes so that it pops up in SEO, so that it goes viral, right? So people's jobs are just different, and now you actually have to be flexible enough to take the tools that are in the business and say, what am I getting from this source, and how can I apply it to do a better job? But in the end, it's always been about consumers.
Absolutely. So one of the clients we work with, Home Depot, they figured out through data gathering that people are much less happy in the afternoons than they are in the mornings. They figured out the reason why is the people that come in the morning come to Home Depot a lot. They know exactly what they need. They don't need customer service. The people that came in the evenings were guys like me. I need to replace my key. I don't know where to go. Right? I get frustrated. So they changed their staffing model based on this information. So do you guys have cases like that where you can tangibly say, like, when I knew this, I did this, and my business got better because of it?
Well, you can, I'll go first on this one. I think you can track the usage, right? When are people coming to your website? I mean, again, you know, the tablet is predominant. Mobile phones, everybody talks about mobile phones. Somebody told me the other day, somebody checks, you know, an average consumer checks their phone 100 times a day. Once you have a sense of when they're checking, then you're going to program your content differently, right? So if people generally multitask with their tablet in bed. So if you know that generally people are watching TV and looking at the tablet in bed, you may think differently about how you're programming that versus like on your mobile device. You're not looking for lengthy, you know, articles on your mobile device. You're looking for quick headlines, right? So it's about understanding how consumers are interacting with different platforms and programming to their need, which goes back to you have to know your consumer.
Yeah, along that same line, we focus a lot on the tablet space, and we believe that the tablet is the device for businesses in a B2B context going forward. Just as I oftentimes have said, in the last 5 years, smartphones have changed the way the way consumers behave, and it's my belief that in the next 5 years, tablets will revolutionize the way the businesses behave in a B2B sales type of environment. And so we spend a lot of energy there. And to your question, you know, we're very interested. We're just launching this new capability and this new mobile platform into the marketplace, and we're really excited to see what we can learn out of it. We've got a roadmap that extends out the next 3 years of new functionality and new features that we know we want to build into this mobile operating platform. And I think it'll be very interesting for us to change a dynamic where in the past we may have built and launched in a big bang approach, but now we'll get more agile and very interested in using the data elements that we glean off of the use case, that financial advisor engaging with their client, and all of the data that we're able to glean off of that to be able to learn from it, then test new functionality and improve it over time.
You know, you mentioned something that I really liked in that you mentioned that you don't really know, but you're testing out this process. You believe it's going to make it easier and going to shorten the bandwidth for a consumer to actually say, yes, I need a policy. I think in a lot of businesses today, they feel so crippled by trying things. They always want data to prove that an innovation will work. Well, how are you going to know it's working? It's never happened before. So tell me about your philosophies on testing. I mean, how do you get or build a business that's going to say, yes, I want you to test things because I want to be an innovative business. I don't want to be disrupted by somebody else.
Yeah, it's a good question because it really speaks to, for me, it speaks to this balance between the data elements in your business and then using those and pairing them with the human element. And we can't forget that data left to data is not really good for anything. But data combined with the human element is where power and synergy can be found in real business results. And so that's where we're focused at, is making smart decisions, as you referred to, Maryam, is making sure that we're smart about our business case and our use case, but at the exact same time, going a bit with that instinct of what our gut tells us, what our head tells us. And we spend a lot of time looking at what other verticals and other industries are doing. And so if you're wondering why in the world is an insurance guy at a conference like this, it's because I don't like going to insurance conferences because there's nothing new there. There's nothing innovative there. There's
That's
nothing
like a whole
happening there.
therapy session waiting.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. So that's what we're interested in, is to learn from other verticals and other spaces and to bring that back where we think it applies into the insurance industry and get very good and very quick about testing new ideas and new features, new functionality, with the ultimate goal, though, to improve that customer experience and remove friction out of the buying process.
So, I mean, I guess one of the things I would say is we both work at big companies, right? So generally speaking, entrepreneurs take big risks, they learn from their mistakes, and they go on. And one of the things I think about a lot, because we at Gannett are in the, at a halfway point, I guess, in our transformation, is how do you actually bring that spirit of entrepreneurship within the organization? How do you get people to take risks? How do you get them to not feel like taking a risk that might lead to failure is something that's negative? Because frankly, if anybody tells you they know where things are going, I would tell you that they're making that up. Because anybody I talk to who's quite knowledgeable will tell you nobody really knows. It's about making a lot of bets and just being willing to be agile and flexible to get there. But big companies historically have not been good at that. I was at a conference not long ago at the Financial Times conference in London, and I was giving Jeff Bewkes a hard time because he was on the panel the day that Netflix announced their subscribers. And they announced that they had more subscribers than HBO. And, you know, I was asking him what he thought about that, and he sort of fluffed it off and said, you know, Showtime, I mean, HBO just has so much more money in terms of developing stuff. And I said to him, you know, I remember 20 years ago when there was an Orlando TV project, which was basically Netflix about 20 years ago. And I remember when there was Pathfinder, which was basically the beginnings of the internet. And frankly, Time Warner killed its own innovation because the day-to-day business of the company wasn't interested in the thing that was going to disrupt the people who were in management at the time. That's a very complicated thing, right? Most people are rewarded for actually keeping the status quo and the day-to-day business going, which means when something comes and you have to, you know, balance resources, you're not going to want to fund the Orlando TV project and Pathfinder, which they basically killed themselves, right? So it's kind of a startling thing when you look back. So I think you have to have a culture of innovation in these big companies, and just buying companies isn't enough, because what happens is when you buy an entrepreneurial company, you bring them in because they're not risk averse and they make mistakes. What happens is the minute those golden handcuffs are up, they're out the door. And so that's not really a long-term solution, right? So I think there's a lot of things companies can do, but there really has to be a commitment from the top that you're going to actually celebrate people who take risks and fail. Because when you do that, then somebody will say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to get fired if I make a mistake because I ran after that, which, you know, might not have worked out.
So if you're listening to them talk, it's pretty interesting because I'm listening to them talk about product innovation, operational innovation, service innovation, guidance and leadership in regards to the thinking and alignment, the culture of your business. Sometimes these things, you know, and I know you get data from different sources now. You get social, you get customer service data. What exactly would you say is a CMO's job now? Because you're not talking about traditional marketing.
I mean, I always thought everybody's job was to help generate revenue. I mean, I don't care what title you have, if you're the chief digital officer, the sales guy, if there's no revenue, if there's no top line growth, guess what? You're not going to be in that job for very long. So, I think these boxes that everybody lives in, I got to tell you, I don't think those boxes exist anymore. And so if you're living in a box, you're waiting to be disrupted. So your job is to do what it takes to actually get the job done, which is generate revenue at the company. And so if you're going to be linear about it and say, my only job is to, you know, generate brand awareness, guess what? When they don't make their numbers, you ain't going to be there for very long. So I think your job is to be a business person and to lead. And that means worrying about culture, worrying about sales, worrying about marketing, worrying about your positioning in the company, worrying about what the heck you're going to do with big data, because you can have the data, but you got to know what to do with it. I think you have to be broad in your thinking.
Totally agree with that. And in fact, I think about people first. That's just the common thread through our business is leading the people and making sure that, you mentioned the word alignment, that we're focused on the right things and not the wrong things, and that people are executing at the right levels and at the right time. You know, this notion about using data and all of those things, that's all important, but ultimately those all drive, those are tools in the tool chest to ultimately drive to what you indicated, and that's the revenue engine. So we're focused entirely on revenue generation. You know, quick lesson here, in an insurance company, there's two fundamental ways. There are multiple ways, but two fundamental ways an insurance company makes money, and that's capital investing on the premiums that everybody pays. And so that takes an interest rate environment that's favorable. We all know right now, and for a period of time, interest rates haven't been very favorable. So that revenue source is not as good as it once was. And so that puts additional pressure on the new sales engine, the revenue generation model. And so with that, we've really focused on how to generate and grow our share in our space and generate new sales like we've never done before. Early signs are we're doing a good job. 2012 was up 24% over 2011 in new sales. The first 6 months of 2013 for us, we're up an additional 31% over 2012. And that's on an industry comp of about 6% growth in new sales. And so our share is picking up. We're really pleased about that, and then we think innovations like the tablet space and the mobile operating platform are only going to accelerate that.
So with that, I mean, you're talking about people and you're talking about personnel, and everyone knows there's more information to collect, and like you said, it takes great people to make decisions with this information. So the role of marketing has changed significantly, right? Because a lot of us, I don't know how many marketers I've met that are really that strong in math, right? So there's like a serious personnel shortage, right? And I've met with other companies, and they've said the same things, like, hey, we can't find enough people that are going to be good marketers because we don't have anyone that understands information. This makes sense, right? How are you, or do you, number one, do you experience that? Do you feel like there's a personnel shortage in the quality, in the skill sets you're looking for today? And how do you overcome that if you think there is?
Look, I think it's always hard to find good people. I don't go out looking for mathematicians. I mean, no knock against mathematicians. I think it's about the right mix of people. You have to have people who are good right brain, good left brain. You have to have people who are ideators. I look for people who act like owners rather than renters. I think that is the biggest difference, because if you act like you're an owner and there's garbage on the floor, you're going to pick it up. You're not going to be like, hey, this isn't in the four, quadrants of my job. And I think today that's actually what it's about. You don't have to be good at everything. I mean, it's impossible to be good at everything. I know what I don't know, and then I hire to that. So, if I'm not a great mathematician, I got to just get somebody who I trust who is a good mathematician, and then I have to be able to understand how to take their advice, when to take it, when not to take it, right? So, but I find that it's generally hard to find really good people who are flexible, because I think the name of the game today is being able to be flexible and also to be self-aware, to know what you're good at and know what you're not good at so that you can go hire appropriately. But that being said, I think one of the things when you're in a period of transformation, if you're not, Facebook and Google where you're growing exponentially, is, there's other challenges in hiring people. And so you can't necessarily go out and get, the person who's, I was at Target yesterday, and Jeff Jones, who's the CMO there, told me that when he came to hire his creative director, he hired a guy who had been running Wyden for 10 years, had design work at the Guggenheim and the MoMA. And I looked at a woman who runs corporate marketing. We both sort of looked at each other and said, is there going to be a day where I can hire somebody in design who actually has pieces at the MoMA? That's a high-end luxury, and maybe one day I'm going to be able to do that. I don't know about the rest of you, but we generally work on scrappy budgets, which means we're all jacks of all trade, right? You got to be able to do everything you can with what you got. And maybe one day I'm going to wake up and the genie's going to come out, and I'm going to be like, I'm going to hire, the best mathematician, the best design. It's not really realistic, right? So I think it's hard to find good people. It's always been hard to find good people. I think you just have to know what you're good at and how you actually balance yourself out, given the job you're trying to solve.
Yeah, for us, a couple of things in context here. One is location. Location never hurts. We're in Newport Beach, California.
He's recruiting right now.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yes, I did bring the nice weather out this week. I've been here since Sunday. But for us, I have just recently hired a data expert, if you want to call it that, a data analytics person. And for that individual, we actually found him in Los Angeles. They were in downtown LA. A number of different factors, as there always are. But in that case, we haven't found it extremely difficult for a couple of reasons. One, no insurance company has figured all of this out yet, and no insurance company has, in fact, even led on this front of innovation and digital and mobile and social and so on and so forth and data. And so for us to be at that leading edge in our vertical is a big, big deal. And so if you can find those types of individuals within the fin services space in general, we feel like we've got a leg up in the ability to somewhat sell to them on the fact that, wow, you're going to be at the leading edge and leading the charge on innovation in this space. And so that's been a big advantage for us. This particular individual didn't want to raise their family in downtown Los Angeles where they had been. And so Orange County is an hour south with better weather and less smog and less traffic and closer to the beach and a lot of advantages there. And so, so that worked out well for us. But you know, I think as a general consensus, though, yeah, it's going to be difficult going forward. And I think, you know, I just referred to people earlier. People's the biggest common denominator of our business, and that's going to be going forward, I think, what differentiates great firms and great companies from average companies.
Absolutely. I think that your idea of, the Miriam's idea of sense of ownership is actually the exact way to go. Obviously, people have a vested interest in the success. They love and value their jobs, and they want to, you know, do what it takes to build the business. It's absolutely where it's going to go. Now, we only have a little bit of time left. I want to get down this path of consumer insight, and it's one of the things that people are really pushing for. I know for our end, because we're collecting all this social data. So when you collect consumer feedback, and it's usually typically qualitative or it's quantitative, whatever the case may be, how much do you base your new marketing decisions based off this consumer feedback? Like, when do you know that you are actually collecting a representative sample of what people think of your business, or when you think it's not a good sample and you know, basically you should ignore it? There are certain businesses that, of course, get the data and they say, I'm not going with that.
Yeah, so I'll take a crack at this. You know, I'm going to take it just in a slightly different direction. We obviously get consumer insights around the brand and some of those things, but most of my comments today have been about improving the business and the actual results of the business at the front line. One of the things that's interesting about using big data in the consumer insights arena, most people wouldn't be aware, some of you may be aware, that when you apply for an insurance product, like with Pacific Life or any number of other companies in our space, we oftentimes will take that application through an underwriting process, and we're using big data in that underwriting process. Some of the largest databases in the US, certainly. One of those in particular happens to be a prescription drug database. And so whether you realize it or not, we do know, whether you told us you do or don't, we know whether or not you take prescription drugs and what you might then take them for. And so we're analyzing that type of information about each individual person that applies for our product, and to assign a risk assessment to that, ultimately a pricing assessment. I think that that's one element then that we can start to drive from databases like that. Electronic medical records will be the next frontier that we hope to emerge to and bridge to. And once those types of things happen, that then feeds back into the marketing arena. The marketing ability to position additional product at the right point, at the right time, to the right people, that it will be both profitable for us, but at the same time will be useful for the individual actually making the purchase. And it becomes a lot more scientific than the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, the granddad's approach to selling insurance.
So Gannett owns 82 local media companies that were started as newspapers. And when we launched a paid subscription model in those markets, we did conjoint analysis to get to the pricing model. Guess what? When you're going to do a pricing model, you're going to look at that data and you're going to, for the most part, base your decision making on that data. When Larry Kramer came in and took over the helm at USA Today, he hired Michael Wolff, the writer, and Josh Gad. So Josh Gad writes for the life section, Michael Wolff writes for the media section. He did not do focus groups to discover whether the USA Today audience was going to like what Josh or Michael wrote. He decided he had a vision for where the product was going to go, and he went with it. Do we check to see, what their traffic levels are, what the engagement levels are? We do, only to figure out how to promote them better, but not to decide, whether they're the right voice. So I think you have to look at what you're trying to decide. There are times where you're trying to lead, and so that's much more of a decision about your strategy and your gut and where you're trying to go, versus when you're doing pricing, when you actually do have to look. There are models that actually, they're quite predictive, right? So you sort of have to know what you're going for. When I was the CMO at Univision, I'll never forget, we did an ad at the time, which was historic. Univision was beating out some of the English language networks on some of the nights in the summer in terms of ratings. So we did an ad, it was called "The Big Four is Now the Big Five, Comprende." And so, it was a big headline for us. So I remember we did the ad, and some professor somewhere in like Arizona wrote he was offended by the ad. He thought, saying "comprende" was offensive. And so he wrote to the chairman, he wrote to the CEO, he wrote to me, so I just started asking around, people I knew in the marketplace about whether or not there was actually any merit to this. We didn't go out and do focus groups, but I remember so distinctly, we did a call, and the president of the company said to the chairman, okay, we'll be pulling that ad, because clearly it offended somebody, and, I just, I'm going to write him a letter, and we're going to just start pulling that ad. And so the chairman then turned to me. I worked for the president at the time, so this was very popular. He said, well, what do you think? I said, honestly, until somebody complains about your ad, you've sort of not arrived. I mean, there's always somebody who's not going to like your ad, and I've sort of done an informal focus group, and I haven't really gotten that feedback. So I don't know, I'm sort of torn. And he said, God damn it, I'm not letting some guy in Arizona make a decision about my ad. We're keeping that ad. So we got off the phone, and the president called me and said, thanks a lot. But, you got to know. You got to know, you got to trust your gut, right? And one of the things Jerry Prencio was incredibly good at, right, having sold Univision at the top of the market, having done the Bobby Riggs match, I mean, he just knew when to trust his gut and when to look for further information. And you have to have that. You have to believe in your instinct, because you can't, there's a lot of opinions to be had. And I have to tell you, as you get more senior, you get more people who are going to just agree with you. And so you have to know when to parse through that information.
That's fantastic advice. I see Shelly is hovering, which means it's time for us
Time
to
is
go.
up.
Miriam and Greg will be,
I got that
they're
data
in this
point.
panel. I encourage you to come up and talk to them. They are friendly, all right? And smart.